Chapter 1: The Whispering City. Chicago, Illinois, moved through the night like a living thing, humming with trains, neon lights, and the distant echo of sirens. Beneath the glow of street lamps, shadows stretched across the South Side blocks where 13-year-old Micah Johnson walked home from school with his hoodie pulled tight, his backpack heavy with books he never asked for. He had always been quiet, polite, and gentle, yet wherever he went, strange things seemed to follow. Streetlights flickered as he passed, not in a cinematic way but subtly enough for people to whisper. Dogs barked at him for no reason. Children stared. Adults muttered. And lately, Micah began hearing whispers that did not come from anyone around him. They were not voices exactly, more like suggestions, faint thoughts that were not his own. They told him he was cursed, that something was wrong with him, that the shadows knew his name. He tried to shut them out, shaking his head, humming old church songs, anything to drown them, but they persisted. On a cold October evening he sat at the edge of the lakefront, staring out at the gray waves slapping the concrete. "God, if you were real," he whispered, "why did you make me like this?" A sudden gust of wind whipped across the water, swirling leaves into the air. Micah shivered and turned. An elderly woman approached, leaning on a cane, her coat buttoned high to her neck. She stopped a few feet away and studied him with gentle, knowing eyes. "Child, you have been listening to the wrong voice." Micah stiffened. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," she replied with a soft smile. "But I know who you are." She pointed her cane toward the lake. "Chicago speaks loudly, but heaven speaks truer. What you hear is not your identity. You are not a curse. You are chosen." Micah swallowed hard. "How do you know that?" "Because the scriptures say so," she answered, her voice firm but warm. "I am Mother Evelyn, and the Lord sent me. The enemy wants you afraid of your calling, but I came to remind you of truth, truth straight from John chapter 3 verse 16. Micah felt the wind shift again, softer this time, as if the city itself exhaled. The whispers in his mind quieted, almost recoiling. He stared at the woman, unsure whether to run or listen. "Come, child," Mother Evelyn said, gently touching his shoulder. "There is a circle of believers praying for you. We will help you understand the voice of God, and together we will silence every lie spoken over you." Micah hesitated, then slowly rose to his feet. As he walked beside her, the city lights no longer flickered. The shadows no longer stretched toward him. For the first time, something pushed back against the darkness within him. And though he did not understand it yet, that night marked the moment the battle for Chicago began. Chapter 2: Signs and Misunderstandings. The next morning began like any other in Chicago, the trains clattering down the tracks, steam rising from manholes, buses groaning at every stop as the city shook itself awake. But for Micah, everything felt slightly off, as if an invisible weight had shifted inside him. At school, students whispered more than usual. A mural in the hallway depicting Chicago heroes had cracked overnight, the split running right through the painted face of a firefighter holding a rescued child. Some students claimed that the wall cracked the moment Micah walked by. Micah ignored them, but their words sank deep. During lunch, a group of kids argued loudly that Micah was bad luck, insisting he could sense things before they happened. One boy mentioned how the streetlight outside his house had blown out minutes after Micah walked past the night before. Another claimed Micah's shadow had stretched unnaturally long during gym class. The rumors spread fast, and by the final bell, people were watching Micah in a mixture of fear and fascination. After school, Micah walked to the small church at the corner of 63rd Street, where Mother Evelyn had told him to meet the prayer circle. He hesitated at the door, uncomfortable, but something inside urged him forward. The sanctuary smelled of old wood and lemon oil, sunlight filtering through stained glass onto the floor. There were only 3 other people present: a middle-aged pastor, a young woman with red braids, and an older man sitting quietly in the corner with a Bible in his lap. The pastor stood. "Micah Johnson. Welcome. We've been waiting for you." The young woman smiled warmly. "I'm Anna. This is Deshaun," she said, gesturing to the man with the Bible. We are part of the circle Mother Evelyn told you about. Micah stared at them nervously. Why are you all here? What do you want with me? What we want, the pastor replied, is to tell you the truth about who you are. You have been hearing lies for far too long. Tonight we begin breaking them. Not with magic, not with superstition, but with prayer and scripture. Like from 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7, which says God has not given us a spirit of fear. They formed a small circle around Micah, praying softly, voices rising and falling like gentle waves. Micah felt warmth spreading through him, not frightening, but peaceful. The whispers in his head tried to push through, but for the first time, they were muffled, distant. Afterward, Anna placed a gentle hand on his arm. Micah, those strange things people say you cause, they are not signs of a curse. They are symptoms of a battle. And you are not alone. Micah breathed slowly, unsure of everything except one thing. This felt like the first truth he had heard in a long time. As he stepped outside into the cool evening air, the city looked the same, but he felt different. And far above the rooftops, clouds churned in silent patterns, as though something unseen was watching. Chapter 3: The First Confrontation. The following days grew heavier. Micah feels the strange occurrences increasing across his neighborhood, streetlights flickering at random, animals acting restless, neighbors reporting nightmares that felt too vivid to dismiss. Rumors about Micah intensified, with students whispering behind lockers that he was marked or dangerous. Yet despite the gossip, Mother Evelyn, Anna, and Deshaun remained close, guiding him through scripture, teaching him to recognize when a thought did not belong to him. One evening, while walking home along the lakefront, Micah felt an icy pressure grip his chest, halting him mid-step. The whispers surged suddenly, hissing accusations and lies, telling him he was destined for destruction, telling him Chicago trembled because of him, telling him he was a mistake. The waves crashed violently against the concrete, the wind roared through his ears, as though creation itself echoed the torment. Micah gasped and clutched his head, stumbling backward. The shadows around him seemed to stretch unnaturally, creeping closer like living things. He cried out, "Stop! Please stop!" At that moment, Mother Evelyn appeared, moving far quicker than her age suggested, her cane tapping sharply against the ground. She raised her voice, not in fear but with commanding authority. "Micah, do not bow to the lies. Speak truth. Speak the word. Remember Romans chapter 8 verse 31, which says that if God is for us, who can be against us?" Micah shook, sweat dripping down his face, his breath unsteady. Anna and Deshaun arrived seconds later, breathless from running. They formed a circle around Micah just as the wind intensified, swirling like a vortex. "Pray," Mother Evelyn instructed. "Now." Their voices rose over the roar of the wind, scripture spoken aloud with power. The shadows recoiled, fluttering like torn fabric caught in a storm. Micah, through trembling lips, forced out the only verse he could remember clearly, "For God so loved the world, that he gave his only Son." At the sound of his words, the pressure shattered. The wind died. The lake stilled. The whispers retreated into silence. Micah collapsed to his knees, breathing hard, his face wet with tears. Anna knelt beside him, steadying him. "That was not your fault," she said softly. "That was an attack. And you stood your ground." Mother Evelyn helped him to his feet. "This was only the first confrontation," she warned gently. "But do not fear. You are learning to fight back with truth." As they walked him home, the moon rose over the lake, bright and steady. What had been a place of torment moments before now felt strangely calm, as though the light itself bore witness to the victory. Chapter 4: The Gathering Storm. Chicago braced under a week of strange weather. Storm clouds hovered over the skyline even when forecasts predicted clear skies. People complained of tension headaches, unexplained anxiety, and sleepless nights. The city felt restless, as though something was pressing against its atmosphere. At school, Micah struggled to concentrate. The whispers returned in soft waves, weaker than before but persistent, trying to convince him he was losing control. Students kept their distance from him except for one boy named Jordan, who threw paper at Micah during class, muttering, "You're cursed, man. Everybody knows it." Micah ignored him, repeating scripture in his mind as Mother Evelyn had taught him. That evening, the circle met in the church basement. They studied passages from Ephesians chapter 6 about spiritual armor, each person reading aloud with determination. "This is not against one child," the pastor said, his voice steady. "This is against a darkness trying to take advantage of fear. But fear is powerless when confronted with truth." Outside, thunder rumbled though no storm had been predicted. The circle exchanged uneasy glances. Mother Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "It is drawn to Micah because he is resisting. The enemy hates resistance." Micah swallowed hard, guilt creeping up again. "I am sorry. I don't mean to cause trouble." Deshaun placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You are not causing it. You are exposing it." Later that night, the clouds unleashed a sudden downpour. Lightning flashed over the Willis Tower, thunder booming across the lakefront. Micah sat by his window, watching the storm rage. The whispers pressed again, urging him to believe he was the storm's cause, urging him to hide, to fear, to surrender. But he whispered back, "No. God has not given me fear. God has given me power, love, and a sound mind." For the first time, the whispers paused. Not defeated, but hesitant. And Micah knew something was changing. Chapter 5, The Revelation at the Lakefront. The storm intensified throughout the week, culminating in a night where the clouds swirled directly above the lakefront in spiraling formation. People posted videos online calling it unnatural. Some feared a tornado. Others whispered about supernatural signs. Micah felt a tug inside him, pulling him toward the water. He texted Anna, "I think I need to go to the lakefront." She replied instantly, "We are already on our way." When he arrived, the circle stood waiting. The wind whipped violently around them, waves slamming against the concrete. The swirling clouds pulsed with flashes of light. Anna stepped closer to Micah. "Something is being revealed tonight," she said, her voice trembling with awe, not fear. The whispers surged again, louder than ever, telling Micah to run, telling him he was the cause, telling him the storm would not stop until he surrendered. He pressed his hands to his ears, but the voices were inside, not outside. Mother Evelyn lifted her cane toward the sky. "Micah, listen carefully," she commanded. "The enemy is terrified of what God has placed inside you. That is why it attacks. Not because you are cursed, but because you are chosen. This storm, these whispers, they are not proof of your doom. They are proof of your calling." Thunder roared as if in response. His breath shook. "But I am just a kid." "We all start as children," the pastor said, "but God equips whom he calls." The wind intensified, pushing against them. Micah fell to his knees, overwhelmed. The clouds above swirled faster, forming a vortex of dark motion. Mother Evelyn shouted over the storm, "Micah, speak the truth aloud. Declare who you belong to." Micah felt the pressure closing around him, the whispers screaming lies. Through sheer will, he forced the words out, "I belong to God. I am His." A blinding flash tore through the swirling clouds, splitting them apart. The wind stopped instantly. The lake calmed. Silence fell. The clouds began to dissolve, drifting apart as though erased by an invisible hand. The storm was gone. Micah knelt on the wet concrete, dazed, trembling, and breathing hard. Anna wrapped her arms around him. "You did it," she whispered. "You stood." And for the first time, Micah believed it. Chapter 6, Revival in the City. The morning after the confrontation, Chicago woke to a strange calm. The storm was gone. News anchors called it an unexpected atmospheric break, but those who prayed knew better. At the South Side Church, Micah sat with Mother Evelyn, Anna, Deshaun, and the pastor. His face looked tired but peaceful. "The whispers are still there," Micah admitted, "but they feel weaker, like they are far away." Mother Evelyn smiled. "That is because truth has taken root in you." That week, extraordinary things happened across Chicago. At a block party on 79th Street, Micah quietly prayed for a boy with a sprained ankle, and the boy was suddenly running again, astonishing the crowd. At school, Anna sang a hymn in English and Spanish during an assembly, bringing unexpected tears to students who normally mocked her faith. Deshawn organized basketball nights at the church gym, drawing in teens from rival crews who played together without fighting. Hope began spreading. People from surrounding neighborhoods started attending church again, curious about the strange peace settling over certain blocks. Artists repainted cracked murals in Pilsen, adding scripture verses like John chapter 3 verse 16 and John chapter 1 verse 5, surrounding the streets with color and hope. On Sunday morning, the church overflowed, every pew filled, people standing outside, listening through open windows. Mother Evelyn prayed with authority, the pastor preached with clarity, and Anna led worship with a voice that seemed to rise over the whole block. Micah stood quietly in the back, unnoticed by most, but he felt the truth deep within him: I am not a curse. I am his. Chicago was not a perfect city. There were still sirens. There were still struggles. But something had shifted. A seed of revival had been planted, and it was growing. A soft narrative voice seemed to echo over the city itself, saying, what people called an omen, heaven turned into a promise. And the light shone.